But yeah, anyway, I kind of do my outline. I write out an outline, some bullet points, and then like I'll just record as is on my phone, of course, and then chop it up on my phone. Like I said, I have iMovie and a couple other apps that I use, and punctuality is important. Punctuality. Oh, for sure. Right. Um, I, I say the division right now. I mean, of course, it's still early. Like that's the thing about it. Um, a lot of people want to panic, and it may seem like the sky is falling. Um, but like I said, it's still early. You don't want to get too far ahead of yourself and just make dramatic changes. Granted, I've saw the gripes and complaints of Bucks Nation about firing Mike Smith, and I approve that message. However, the Bucks, you got to be disappointed a little bit in the defense's performance so far. I mean, granted, a ton of injuries and there was some youth in the secondary, so there's gonna be growing pains. I mean, it is what it is. I've seen that. You've probably seen that probably a lot of the teams in the division. I mean, the Panthers a couple years ago, year after the Super Bowl, they had rookie corners. They went through those growing pains. The Falcons, they had some younger guys in there. They went through some growing pains. The Saints, they had some young talent last year. Granted, they improved very quickly, which kind of helped them make their deep run last year. But there's going to be growing pains when you have a secondary like that. And when you're in a division like this, where the quarterbacks are that good, that position is crucial. But like I said, it's still early. I mean, the Bears versus the Bucs game. There's not a lot of positives you can say about that. I watched your video the other day, and I was pretty much died laughing watching this because I mean, there's not a ton you can say. I mean, the stuff that was, I guess, the awesome segment you had that was pretty mold, but the Bears are one of the their defense is like legitimate. If anybody can replicate the formula of dominant defense, mediocre quarterback and make a deep run, i.e., the Ravens or the Broncos from the other year or whatever, is them. Because Khalil Mack is just, it's not too much you can say about him. He can literally change a game. He did it to Aaron Rodgers. Granted, Aaron Rodgers snapped his fingers and made a comeback, and his impact is just whatever. So you don't want to panic, but at the same time, it's still early. They had a bye week. Maybe they can get some stuff straightened out. Coming out the Falcons, this is a good week to right the ship because their defense is just as bad as the Bucs. So definitely a good game for Jameis to come back to after the bye week after suspension. Uh, I don't know. The cover is definitely not there as far as talent wise. I'll say that, and that's why a lot of people are looking at Mike Smith. They made a lot of moves in the offseason to improve their front seven. Um, and they just haven't seen the results right off the bat. I mean, JPP has done his thing, however, um, but it just seems like a lot of the mistakes that they made against the Bears weren't just pure I'm getting beat because the guy in front of me is better than me. It was more of okay, you got this guy. No, this is cover three. You have this guy, and they were just blown coverages. It wasn't necessarily anything like also doesn't have the ability to cover a wide receiver. It was more of okay, I never played this position before. I haven't had enough experience in the NFL before, and they run this combination route and just confuse me. You got this guy, no, you got this guy, and it was holes in the defense. It wasn't anything that can't be corrected, which is why the people are blaming coaching. They're thinking that they're not coaching these young guys how they're supposed to be. So um, that's just kind of how I saw it from the Bears' perspective because Mitch Trubisky is not a good quarterback to me. I mean, I'm just going to be real. I don't like him. I didn't like him coming out. He was a one-year starter. He was a backup behind a decent quarterback, I guess, at the college level, but the guy that he was behind didn't get a look in the NFL. I think people fell in love with his measurables, quote unquote. But I can throw a rock in an ocean, and so can Mitch Trubisky. Guys were wide open. I mean, it is what it is, but like I said, they're correctable mistakes. I mean, there's like the talent's there, the cover's not bad there. There's talent on both sides, honestly. But defensively, they put a lot of money in that front, and I mean the talent's there. You can't. It's not to me. I mean they've been bad, and it seems like it can be correctable. And every game doesn't have to be a shootout, but I feel like they've proven they can win those type of games. Um, but like you said, the competitiveness they showed in each game, besides the Bears, obviously it's got to be something you can kind of hang your hat on. Uh, do I know who Alec Marpet is? Yes, he's a starting guard, one of the better linemen for the Bucs. I did hear about his signing. It was kind of a random time for an extension to come. I mean, granted, it's a bye week, so I guess you kind of got some downtime. Why not hit up an agent or two and see if you can get a big extension? But I mean, was it like 11 million per year? I think 5 years, 55 million, which is that's a hefty amount of money for a guard. And it made a statement. I mean, I think a lot of the gripe last year was that the offensive line wasn't great, and clearly they made moves this offseason to shore that up to try to make sure that Jameis was in the best position to succeed going forward, especially when you're trying to figure out if you're going to pay this guy a boatload of money going forward as your franchise quarterback. So um, I did hear about the signing. I think it's a good investment. Like the Cowboys have shown that investing in your offensive line is always a pretty good way to go. Granted, they're not in the best situation right now because of their quarterback, but offensive line it starts and ends up front. That's my opinion on everything. So um, that's just where I stand. I think I lost you now, Corey. Got you. I have I have the screen pulled up so I can see the chat and I can mute you every now and then to let you know the test, but I don't hear you either on my end. So Yeah. Oh, the mighty mighty Saints that everybody's falling in love with because of. See, you gotta love these NFL professional analysts. They tend to they tend to fall in love and are prisoners of the moment. But I wrote some notes. My like having the whole NFC South being covered. Like I don't know why, but majority of my subscribers are Saints fans, and they literally piss me off. And I tell them on every live stream that they piss me off because they engage the most with all my videos. I gotta love them, but I like to get on my nerves. But they engage the most. But anyway, on the field, they haven't to me. They have a lot of hype coming in. Obviously, after they had a little, I guess they call it a fluky loss last year to Minnesota. A
Right.
lot of people expect them to be the number 2 or 3 team behind either the Eagles or Rams preseason. Um, Starting out though, they have a brutal schedule. I think somebody told me in preseason they literally are the only team in the NFL to play every playoff team from last year again. So
Wow.
it's gonna be tough. I mean, they haven't even hit their tough stretch yet. I mean, they play. I guess they lost to you guys, the Bucs, and that was in warm weather. They played the Browns. They barely beat the Browns. If it wasn't been for some the Browns kicker doing his best Mason Crosby impersonation and missing some field goals, they probably would have lost to the Browns. That was at home. They beat the Falcons in overtime, so that was a close one. And we know how bad the Falcons' defense is, and that was in a dome in a controlled environment. And they beat the Redskins at home last night in a dome once again. And there was no way they were going to lose in prime time with Drew Brees having the record on the line,
Yeah.
Mark Ingram coming back. It was just a perfect storm. I mean, the Redskins aren't terrible, but they aren't great either. And there was just no way that was going to happen. So I just don't think they played anybody yet for me to just say that, oh, they're back, or we saw them struggling. I mean, they played the Giants too. That was the one game we saw them outdoors. Their offense kind of struggled a little bit. Drew Brees kind of struggled a little bit. Fortunately for them, they have a guy named Alvin Kamara who is pretty much impossible to tackle one-on-one. I don't really understand why his balance is so good, but Alvin Kamara is literally probably one of the hardest guys to tackle. But defensively, they've preyed on some of these weaker, I guess, offensive teams like the Giants and the Redskins, obviously recently. But I don't think their defense is good. They lost Marshawn Lattimore last night to a second concussion in as many years. They already had questions at their second cornerback position, so that'll be something to pay attention to. Definitely, they have to bye right now though, but their stretch coming up. I looked at their schedule and they're at the Ravens after their bye week. They're at Minnesota. They play the Rams at home, and then at the Bengals in November, which is going to be freezing. Then they play the Eagles, who are kind of they have talent, but they're kind of right now. And of course, they have the Falcons again on Thanksgiving, which is always a toss-up.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to find out a lot about them coming up. There's a brutal stretch of 5 to 6 games that they have, so I think we're really going to figure out where they are in the NFC and in the division in particular there. A lot of those games aren't division games, but we're going to find out a lot about them.
Yeah, that's great points. And hey, I'm here. I'm seeing in the chat people can finally hear me. So I don't know what I did. I did a bunch of tinkering, and finally, I guess we have audio. So, since no one could hear me before, I will introduce you a third time. This is Aaron Duncan of Unnecessary Bluntness. You guys should check out his channel, Unnecessary Bluntness. I'll try to see if I can get a link together and post it in the chat. He covers the whole NFC South, so I'm just getting his view on not only the Bucs but the rest of the division. Because hey, even though we're all down and out from the last game, we're still 2-2 and very much in the thick of things. So, Aaron, what you said about the Saints, that actually kind of gives me a little bit of hope because they played the Bucs that first game and everybody expected that defense to come back and just tear us apart, and it was a huge shootout. And suddenly it's like, oh, that defense is exposed a little bit. And I haven't really followed them since then. So it's interesting to me that you say that you feel like they haven't really played top offenses yet and that they might run into brick wall as far as offenses are concerned. So that gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah, and they have to eventually play outdoors or not somewhere where it's 80 degrees in October like Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
They have to play somewhere where it's cold eventually. So I don't really trust dome teams coming down the stretch. So
interesting. Yeah. That's that is interesting. I mean, now I think when you said that, I think about dome teams like the Falcons, the Saints, and the Vikings. It's just like teams that seem to suddenly just eventually it catches up to them.
Yeah.
Now people probably didn't hear me say this before, but you are a Panthers fan. So I would love your honest opinion on the Panthers, where they stand right now. I haven't seen a whole lot of Panther stuff. Like I said at the beginning, I don't really pay attention to the divisional opponents until we start playing them. Now,
Right.
I peek in every once in a while to see the record and stuff like that. Now, I wrote on Twitter, and I want your kind of reaction to this. I wrote on Twitter that it feels like the Panthers have been the luckiest team in the NFL for like 5 years. And it was just accentuated by the fact that they won on this, like, tying the record length of a field goal, which the Bucs did a few years ago against the Eagles, or 10 years ago with Matt Bryant. But so we know what that feels like. But I mean, just an insane game.
Right.
And I'm thinking, all right, here we go. Finally, the Panthers are going to lose, and they somehow squeak out with a win. So, what do you think about that?
Just to start with talking about the Giants game, there was a lot of controversy, to say the least. Granted, when it goes your way, you don't know how to take it. You don't know how to really say anything about it. But the helmet call they called on Landon Collins kind of helped us out a little bit. A lot of people want to talk about the 3rd and 1 where we ran the ball. Christian McCaffrey. Fox said that it was 4th and 1, but the ref said that it was a first down.
Yeah.
And then, like they always do, they come back on Twitter and say that, hey, we reviewed this, but we didn't see anything, and we let it stand. Nobody wants to hear that, and that's why they kind of out on Twitter. They don't really announce it anywhere, like, for everybody to see. But the Panthers pretty much controlled that whole game. I mean, the Giants went up 3-0, but, I mean, the Panthers were pretty much up 10 the majority of the game. That trick play that you've probably seen all over social media where Odell throwing to Saquon was pretty much the only spark that got them going, and all of a sudden Eli woke up, but he did have a couple giveaways. But, of course, Cam Newton, he gave it right back a few times, but they ended up making a run. I mean, I knew the game was probably going to be closer than the experts thought. The last game we played them, in 2015, they came back on us also with an Odell go-ahead touchdown, and Graham ended up making a game-winning field goal then. Graham Gano actually has a pretty good leg. I don't know if you keep up with college, but Florida State typically has pretty good kickers.
Yeah, until they end up on the Bucs.
Right, aside from the recent history with the Bucs, Graham Gano has a huge leg anyway. Did I think he was going to make that from 63 yards? No, nobody's going to say it. No, if anybody said that, they're lying to you.
Yeah,
you kind of take it. You said that we were one of the luckiest teams. My theory is that most teams in the NFL, like a few teams are better than others, but most teams in the NFL are 8-8 anyway. It's those 5 or 3, 4, 5, 6 games that can go either way, that you either win or lose. I mean, the 2015 season, the Panthers got all the lucky breaks. 2016 season, they lost 7 games by 1 possession or less. Like, they just didn't get. And it kind of just goes, when it's your time, it's your time. The same way the Eagles got lucky last year and made a run.
Yeah.
It kind of just happens. But going forward, the Panthers, their defense has not been looking how I expected. They haven't been dominating like they usually been. I mean, they've been top 10 for the past forever, as long as I can remember. And this year just looks a little bit different. Usually it's their secondary that's kind of weak. But this year it's their front that's not getting a consistent pass rush. They're pretty steady against the run, but the pass rush has been kind of lacking. Granted, Thomas Davis, their best blitz and linebacker, has been suspended for PED, of course, but he'll be back after next week. But I want to see what happens. I mean, they've lost 3 coordinators in the past. Well, they lost 2 coordinators in the past 2 seasons. Maybe that's finally catching up to them. I don't know, because the personnel has been consistent. It's mainly just the coordinator. So we'll see what happens going forward with the Panthers. But they're in a pretty good spot right now. They're 3-1. I mean, they haven't played anybody really great either. I mean, they beat the Bengals, but I mean, they haven't played anybody great either. But the way the formula is set up, their formula of winning with running the ball and trying to play good defense seems a lot more sustainable than throwing 30, 40, 50 times a game like the Saints.
Yeah.
And that, so.
Well, there is one particular player I want your thoughts on, because when he was signed, Bucs Twitter blew up asking why we didn't make the same signing, and that is your brand new safety over there. So he's played a game now, right? Or was he very active in the last game?
He definitely played. He started, actually. Of course, I mean, he nailed. I think everybody probably saw that. But the thing you said about everybody wondering why the Bucs didn't sign, I think that was every team
Yeah.
said why they signed him. Especially when they saw how cheap the Panthers got him for. I think they got him for like $1.9 million.
Yeah.
And he was a former Pro Bowl safety, but he did play. He didn't play. I didn't check the official snap counts, but I know he finished the game on the final drive going down the stretch where we actually gave up a touchdown. He played then and he started, of course, but he rotated a lot. I mean, Coach Rivera kind of blamed it on him getting his legs up underneath him because it's been so long since he actually played football.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he said he's in shape conditioning by himself, but until you run around and have to block, hit, and tackle guys, like you really can't simulate that. So, and once he gets the system down, I think it was kind of more of some of the stuff they wanted to do. And I think playing the Giants, excuse me, sometimes matchups are just not in certain people's favor. So, I mean, it just kind of depends. But he did play. He didn't have a huge impact, but I think the excitement and the buzz he created by being signed will help a lot. And we'll see what happens. I mean, only time will tell. I mean, he's a good player. I think the system is pretty good for him. So I think only time and experience will help him.
Well, I actually kind of made fun of Bucs fans on Twitter, just like, anytime there's a signing and it's a player from a position of need, it's everyone's flipping tables and everyone's freaking out. Why didn't the Bucs do this? And I hearken it back to when the Bucs signed T.J. Ward late in the preseason last year. Bucs fans were so excited because they're like, oh, he's going to change the defense and he's going to make so much of a difference. And then he, for whatever reason, whether it's because of scheme, because of Mike Smith, or because of his own volition, I mean, he's not signed still. He did not do anything. So I kind of made fun of fans for it. But now, in retrospect, considering how the Bucs played their third string safety against the Bears game and considering how much we got torched in the last game, it's like I'm kind of on the other side. I'm like, well, why didn't we sign him? So congrats. And I can totally foresee us playing the Panthers and having him like just ball out and get 2 picks. But anyway, so I don't have the schedule in front of me. I'm not sure when the Panthers play the Bucs next, but I'm looking forward to that game because I think the matchup is very interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at I don't have the exact week number, but I'm guessing we're going into week 5 right now. Week 6,
yeah.
It's like week 10 because they got Panthers have at the Redskins, at the Eagles, home versus the Ravens, and the home game versus the Bucs in Charlotte. So I guess that's week 10 if my counting is correct.
Yeah.
But it's always a closer game than I remember. Like I don't know what game that was where Cam got hurt and like Derek Anderson came in and then like he ended up throwing a pick on the goal line at halftime. It was a weird game, and the games are always interesting. I mean,
it's true.
A monsoon during the game, and like I don't know, it's been every time we play them, it's kind of like I guess it's a little bit more respect there between those teams versus some of the other teams in the division, but it's always interesting when they play each other.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned he who must not be named, Derek Anderson. Like he has been a Bucs killer, and I am so glad he's no longer on the Panthers. Just for whatever reason, except for the last time they played, he just just destroyed the Bucs, and that was so infuriating. But let's move on to the Falcons, and we can even transition there into the game coming up this week between the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Give me kind of your thoughts on the Falcons so far. I mean, they're 1-4. They're super injured, losing 2 safeties and, their best player on defense. So do you see this team kind of completely crumbling, or do you think their offense can at least help them make some noise and maybe limp to an 8-8 finish or maybe even better?
Well, I have a motto that I live by, and it kind of goes this. Falcons are going to Falcon. I mean, they do what they do. They always do what they do. They're going to be who they are. Like, anytime you get your hopes up about what you think they may be or they could be, or they start getting a little bit of hype and attention from the national media, they Falcon. I mean, the injured, the first time in like forever that they actually had a chance to put a legitimate defense together on the field, they crumble like peanut brittle. I mean, they actually probably were one of the healthiest teams coming into the season, just because they really didn't have any injuries in training camp like that. And A lot of people were picking them to go all the way. And week one, they lose guys, and it just started going downhill from there. Like the whole middle of their defense is just a shell of itself, from Grady Jarrett, the nose tackle, to Deion Jones, the linebacker, to Ricardo Allen, the safety. Like, so there's pretty much a void in the middle of their defense, and everybody's taking advantage of it. Their offense is good, but are they enough to carry the team? No, they have their spots where they hit some dry spells. Like they put up numbers and then they have the perfect scheme, but they kind of, I don't know, it's kind of just weird watching them because they kind of like outplay themselves. Like they think too much. I mean, I think they worry too much about what the outside media says about them, about the red zone, or about the lack of running game, or whatever, and they just kind of fall apart. This past week against the Steelers, it was just not a great matchup for them. The Steelers have big, huge linemen on both sides of the field, and on offense, they kind of just ran all over them because the Steelers' offensive line just pretty much leaned all over the Falcons' front and did what they wanted. And then offensively, T.J. Watt looked like J.J. Watt out there, and he pretty much did whatever he wanted. Matt Ryan got sacked 6 times, and they had another block punt. Like, having 2 block punts within 3 weeks, one versus the Saints, one versus the Steelers, is kind of bad. Like, these guys are professionals. This stuff is not supposed to happen, but Falcons are going to Falcon. That's what I say. I think it's pretty much a wrap for them. If they don't win, if the Bucs beat them Sunday, it's pretty much a wrap for them. I mean, I don't think everything's done. I don't think the Bucs are done if they lose this game. It's a must-win for both teams, obviously, but the Falcons definitely need more answers than the Bucs.
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of was, I mean, I wasn't sad that the Falcons lost per se, but there was part of me that was like, well, I'd prefer playing them coming off a win because right now they are backed into a corner, and if this is it for them, like you said. I mean, if they go 1-5, there's just no recovering from that. So, I mean, already it's a tough hill to climb. So right now they're probably just playing for their lives, and that makes them scary. And they're playing at home, so that's the one thing I'm concerned about. Now, what do you think then are kind of we'll kind of take it team by team. What do you like? Who on the Falcons do you think needs to step up, have a big game in order to win this game? In order for them, like who is like a key player for you?
I'll say they got a lot of holes, but I'll have to say probably Trufant. He's their primary corner. He'll be matched up against Evans, of course, and the corners have been getting cooked the past few weeks. And as bad as they've missed the old safeties that have been injured, it's been the corners that have been getting burned. Like, you can't even blame it on the guys that are missing. It's the guys that are out there that aren't performing. Like, eventually, you have to get better. Like, I mean, you might not be a starter, but all this experience, like, the guys that you are missing have been missing for weeks. Like, eventually you got to get over it if you want to make anything out of the season. So, Trufant needs to step up. He's going to be matched up against Evans. He's definitely, from what I've seen, I think Evans or Brait are probably Jameis's favorite targets and more the guys that kind of likes to go to more often than not. Brait may be a bigger factor this week because of the lack of safeties. But I think Trufant versus Evans will be a matchup to watch for sure because we know how bad their pass defense is. And Jameis likes to sling that thing. And he's actually played pretty decent versus the Falcons over his career. I mean, he hasn't done as bad as it seems, but, I mean, we've also seen the Falcons do some crazy things to the Bucs defensively. Yeah. I mean, offense, however, but, I mean, it's neither here nor there. But I will say that Trufant is probably the guy that needs to step up the most.
I think that's a good answer. I mean, I think I think you're right. It will be difficult for them. I see these as two very similar offenses in that, it is a kind of a pick your poison kind of an offense because, you cover Evans. Say Trufant does his job, well, you still have Deshaun Jackson to worry about. You still have Cameron Brate to worry about. You still have Chris Godwin to worry about. Right. On the other side, you shut down Julio. Well, you still have Calvin Ridley. You still have Mohamed Sanu, and you still have Tevin Coleman and Devontae Freeman. So do you see this being the shootout that everybody's predicting it to be? Because I'm trying to think of, and I said this yesterday on Mr. Bucks Nation's live stream. It seems like whenever people are predicting a high-scoring game in the NFL, like people are like, oh, yeah, this is going to be like 60 points or higher. Suddenly it's like a 17-10 game. but I don't see that here. Like it would baffle me if this was a low scoring game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know if you're a sports betting guy, but I am, and
Take the
I've
over.
I've been taking over on the Falcons for the past few weeks, and I've been cashing out. I was a
Nice.
little bit more nervous this past Sunday because they didn't hold their end of the bargain, but luckily between a block punt and a couple of deep balls from Antonio Brown, they cashed that in, and the Steelers dropped a 40 burger. However, this week I don't think it's going to be any different. I think it'll be a shootout. Both of these, it's going to be first of all, it's indoors too, so like the Bucs are coming off of a bye week. Jameis is going to be juiced up for this game.
Yep.
I like Jameis to have a pretty good game this game, but I don't know. It's going to be a lot of points for sure because there's a little, I guess, familiarity amongst the coaching staff as far as I guess the organization and coaching staff,
Yeah.
I guess. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a ton of points. I haven't checked the total yet, but I'm pretty much just going to blindly throw money on it, like I'm throwing money on black at the roulette table. Let's take the over. I think it's going to be a lot of points.
Well, so then that said, do you on the other side, do you think it's a particular defensive player like that's a key person to look out for the Bucs to kind of stop this offense? I mean, is it one player or is it maybe just the secondary needs to step up? Like who do you think needs to step up for the Bucs in order to win this game?
I think the linebacking core in general, not that they have been playing bad, but the Falcons, what they like to do, even though they'll abandon it eventually, they like to run that outside zone, of course. They have athletic linemen that aren't really just going to push people around. They have guys that are just going to try to push you every way you want to go and let their running backs either go to the outside or cut back. Everything they do is set up off that play action. That's why they run so much of that zone. And Matt Ryan is pretty deadly off that play action. To Ridley or Julio, as we've seen. But I think it's going to be a two linebackers. If they can really make the Falcons one-dimensional and make them pass, I mean, granted, it seems like, oh, why would you want them to pass when your secondary is kind of blah, blah, blah. But when you can make a team one-dimensional, it is what, especially after the 6 sacks they gave up this week. I think the Bucs have the front four to be able to make some noise against the Falcons. But that's why I think it all starts with the linebackers stopping the run, making them one-dimensional, and it is what it is. I mean, I think dictating game flow has been a big thing for the Bucs. In their win, they got a lead. I mean, if you get a lead on somebody, that's one way to neutralize the run, which I think is why their run defense has been so stout early on because they get like first game they got a lead on the Saints, and the Saints really just didn't know what to do but pass. I mean, they're going to go back to what they do. So sometimes the offense can be your best defense, but like I said, linebacking core will be the best way to neutralize that run.
Yeah, another great call. The person that stood out in my mind was Kwon Alexander, the linebacker, which you could make a case for either him or Levante David. I think one big thing that they have done this year is that they've looked like they have been over pursuing everything. They've been missing tackles, and that's how guys like Kamara just get so many catches and run all over them because you see them taking bad angles and missing tackles. But if they do their job, if they do what they're supposed to do, it stops them behind the lines and stuff and forces third downs, fourth downs. Like that's huge. And I haven't seen a lot of that from them. And they're both capable of it. That's a big thing too, is Levante David has been kind of buried as far as Pro Bowl consideration just because of guys like your boy Kuechly or, Bobby Wagner and things like that. But he's been at a Pro Bowl level for most of his career, but this year he hasn't shown it a lot. And then Kwon was a Pro Bowl alternate last year, and so far has not. I mean, he's just looked lost out there. So, I agree with you. I think if they do their jobs, the Bucs have a great chance to win. So, moving on to kind of generalities here. How do you see this game playing out?
If the easy answer would be to say that the last team that has the ball is going to win, which is what's happened for the Falcons in pretty much all their games except the last I guess the Saints game that's what happened, and the Bengals game also in these shootouts that they've been in. And since I expected to be in the shootout, that's the simple answer. I think there will be some turnovers on both sides, just because when you have two teams that are either close, like either very good or just closely matched in general. Turnovers usually make the difference, and I think that's going to be a difference in this game. How will Jameis be? Was that half against the Bears enough to kind of shake the rust off, or will he need another half to shake that rust off? Granted, it's a lot. You feel a lot better about him shaking the rust off against the Falcons versus the Bears.
True.
So I think it'll be a back and forth game, man. I think it'll be one of the better ones of the week, honestly. But I said I think it'll definitely come down to turnovers and maybe, God forbid, it comes down to field goal kicking.
No, please no.
But I think touchdowns will be at a premium, and I think it'll be back and forth. I don't know if you want my prediction yet, but
I was about to ask, do you do score predictions or game predictions? Because if so, I'd like to hear it.
I do on Wednesdays, but I'll give my initial score now.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, yeah. Make sure I make sure I get them all in on Wednesdays. But I'll say that I think that, like I said, I think the difference will be turnovers. The Falcons being at home, it just seems like this is a spot, like you said, coming off of a bad loss, going back home, everything's stacked up against them, their backs are against the wall. It seems like a spot where they would win. Granted, do I believe in the Falcons? I don't. That the Bucs actually win this game by, I'll give them by 3 points. I'll say my score will be, let's go. I'll go 33-30. I'll say a close game.
Okay.
I think that I'll say it'll come down to the Falcons will. I think the Bucs will actually not get. I mean, I guess they'll get a late field goal, believe it or not, and I think that'll be enough to keep the Falcons at bay. And I think it'll be a close one either way, and a pretty good game shootout wise. But I'll say 33-30.
I like it. I don't know if you're just trying to get a cheap pop from the crowd or anything like that, but I do think that I am scared of Julio Jones because he always has at least one game against the Bucs where he goes off. I'm definitely starting him in fantasy this week, just because. And on top of that, Brent Grimes has just been not himself. He seems like he's finally slowed down. Now he won't be shadowing Julio per se, but just. When we have our best corner, so to speak, not playing at his best, and then you have rookies on the other side, I think these receivers are going to eat the Bucs up. But that said, I do like Jameis's return being in Atlanta. He tends to play well in Atlanta, and he's going to be amped up. He's probably going to have some hometown friends and family coming to see him just because it's not a far drive from Bessemer, Alabama. And I think he will be amped up. And also, I think he's on a mission. And maybe that's probably my next question for you. And I didn't get your take on this. We've gone through the Fitz magic, and that was fun, the first couple games. I have a bunch of coworkers and people up here in Atlanta telling me about how they need to trade Jameis Winston or they need to cut Jameis Winston because Ryan Fitzpatrick is the best quarterback on the roster. So what do you, from your perspective, see having followed the division and I mean, it's the division of the quarterback for the most part. What do you see Jameis doing this year? Do you have faith in him to take that next step up, or do you think that he has already plateaued?
That's the $1 million question. I'll say that he's not. I don't know. This is definitely the year to find out, though. And like you said, the question is out there, like, is this got a future? To trade him for Ryan Fitzpatrick thing is the biggest joke that I've heard. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick's been in the league, what, 14 years?
Yeah, 16.
We know, 16, excuse me. We know what he is at this point. Jameis, there's a slither of hope that he can get it together. Do I think he gets it together? No. I mean, yes, but I don't think his ceiling is as high as people expected when he came out. Can he be capable? I mean, yeah, I think if the O-line holds up pretty much how they've done besides the Bears game.
Yeah.
And what they have, there's no reason that Jameis can't be successful. Like they literally the past 2 off seasons have made a conscious effort of putting the weapons and protection around Jameis to make sure that he can survive. Now the running game is still lacking, and they need to improve that, which will be the biggest thing I think is what's holding him back the most. But you gotta. I mean, they drafted Rojo, so I mean, you can't say they haven't tried to do something there. But I think that he's in a situation where he has to succeed. If he doesn't, I mean, he won't. I mean, it just is what it is at that point. But I think you have to stick with him. I'm not even a Jameis fan, but I like to think of it like who are you going to replace him with? There's a guy that always wants to fire Matt Ryan.
Yeah,
Matt Ryan, the best quarterback, but who are you going to replace him with?
exactly.
I think it was Sims and Lefko, their little podcast. They had the little Andy Dalton scale, and I like to apply my logic to this.
Yeah.
Like, look, take your quarterback and measure him against Andy Dalton. Is he better than Andy Dalton? If he's better than Andy Dalton, keep him. If he's worse, get rid of him. Andy Dalton's like the midline quarterback, like whatever. Yeah. Where is Jameis at? I would probably put him in line with Andy Dalton, honestly, at this point. But he's shown that his ceiling is probably higher than Andy's when he's on. And I think that the rest of the year, I mean, they've gotten the worst of the schedule out the way. That's the price. And they actually got a decent amount of wins. Quiet as kept. I picked them to go 0-4 during the start stretch. So they're way ahead of schedule when I thought them to.
You're not alone. You're not alone.
To be so. I think he'll get it together, man. I think he can be good enough. He may not be able to carry a team, but with the weapons that they have, he doesn't have to. He just has to be a point guard, man, and distribute the ball to those guys and let them do the work. So,
yeah, you're right. This is the year for him to prove it. I obviously, and this is the homer in me, I have faith that he'll prove it, that he will take that next step up, and to give some legitimacy to it, just those last 6 games when he came back from his injury last year, I mean, he looked the best I've ever seen him. And a lot of those losses were not on him. They were on the defense, blowing leads late. And there were so many situations where he would bring the Bucs to a lead in the fourth quarter, and the defense would not be able to stop the opposing offense. So I do think Jameis is on a mission. I am a little concerned that what he's gone through now has changed him for the worse, but it could have changed him for the better. In that he hopefully will not be as erratic and too hyped up. We've seen this in the past with him. He used to be a slow starter because he'd get so amped up for a game that he'd just be overthrowing all over the place, and then he'd settle in after halftime, and by then we'd be losing by a lot. So I am hopeful for Jameis. I think he is definitely the best quarterback that the Bucs have ever had talent-wise, with the exception with Steve Young in there because he was a Buccaneer for a year, but and maybe Doug Williams. Although I'm not old enough to remember Doug Williams, so maybe some of the older people in the chat can let me know. But I think just potential wise and talent wise, Jameis is the Bucs Jameis has the biggest potential the Bucs have ever had, and we need to stick with him. And I do think this is the year for him to show the world that, hey, I am here, I can take over a team and take that next step up. So he could go that way, or he could go the way that Marcus Mariota is going currently, which is a downward trend. So I have faith that he'll do it. I have a lot of people up here in Atlanta telling me how much they hate Jameis Winston, and oh man, I would just love it for him to stick it to him. I know you've probably gone through that with Cam Newton. So... And I will say this, just as an aside, I still really dislike Cam Newton, but just as a person. But I did not think he would do anything in the NFL, and he completely proved me wrong. I actually made a bet with a friend that he would never make it to the Super Bowl, and obviously he did, and I lost that bet. So he's proved me wrong, and I'm hoping Jameis can do the same thing for people. I definitely think his potential is up there. His ceiling is very high. He will never be Peyton Manning. He will always throw picks. But, man, when he is on, and this is the one thing I'm looking forward to, and you mentioned the offensive line in the Bears game, one thing that Jameis brings to this that Ryan Fitzpatrick could not was the escapability. Like, he can evade tacklers. He's got really good pocket presence, pocket awareness. Ryan Fitzpatrick would just crumple under pressure, whereas Jameis is always escaping and getting away. So he brings that dynamic to it. Yes, he takes risks, but when they pay off well. So here's hoping.
I got a question for you, actually. I guess you answered part of it. You said you think he would take the next step. What is the next step? What do you see where do you see him? Do you ever see him being an MVP caliber quarterback? Do you see him just being like a You ever see him calming down and kind of being more of a game manager, like I said, a distributor to the talent that he has? Because he has a lot of young talent.
Yeah.
And that was my first question. And two, how much of an impact do you think the lack of running game has had on Jameis to the fact that they can't have any balance, and a lot of teams know what's coming and they can kind of dictate where Jameis is going to go, and that's kind of what allows him to force the ball in certain scenarios. Because there were a lot of games last year that I saw that the lack of consistent running game. You've seen it this year. I mean, they'll start off sticking to it, and they won't go back to it later, regardless of the score. And it just seems like he kind of crippled it. So where do you see? Like, do you think the lack of running game has kind of affected his development too? Because I'm trying to think if they actually had a consistent running game since he's been there, like consistent.
Yeah.
I know and had a run, but consistency, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so those are two really good questions, and I'll address the last one first. I agree with you. I think Jameis works at his best when he has a run game, and he can work off the play action. And I think it was evident in 2016 when Doug Martin led the league in rushing. Maybe it was 2015 that he did. Either way, I think Jameis had one of his best years when Doug Martin was leading the league in rushing or was second in rushing. So I do agree with you. I think not having a running game really hurts Jameis and does in the long run. Now, under Todd Monken now calling the plays, it seems like he's adapted the offense to where we can withstand a little bit more of a pass-first kind of offense. So we'll see about that, but I do think the run game is hurting, and I'm worried for it, honestly. I thought Peyton Barber was going to do better than he has. I thought the offensive line were going to do better than they have, opening up lanes for him. And Ronald Jones, I've always been kind of meh on him ever since the pick. And the fact that he couldn't even dress until the Bears game concerns me. He still dropped the wide open pass. That concerns me. And I think that Jameis might suffer. I think it's possible to see him suffer with the lack of run game. But again, the hope is that the offense this year has been a little bit different in that they have succeeded by being a passing offense. And Jameis in the preseason was, and again, it is preseason, but Jameis in the preseason was looking good with this offense. And so that's kind of the hope there. Now, as far as the question about, what is Jameis's potential, I would say, his floor is, it could be a complete breakdown where he could lead the league in interceptions and throw for only like 8 touchdowns or something like that. He's capable of that for sure. But I do think his ceiling, and now I want to emphasize ceiling, like this is probably the top that I could see his potential going, is Ben Roethlisberger-esque, where he kind of has the same kind of game to Ben Roethlisberger. I'd call him kind of a hybrid of Ben Roethlisberger and Brett Favre. He takes risks, he makes impossible plays, and sometimes he'll lose a game for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like Big Ben's capable of the same things, both on the negative and the positive. I've seen him do it, but I've seen him have a lot more great than bad over his many years, and I feel like that could be Jameis' ceiling. Big Ben's always had the benefit of an all-star wide receiver and a really great run game. So I'm not sure if Jameis will get there simply because of the team that he plays for. But there is no excuse for him kind of this year. Well, there may be an excuse with the run game, but at least as far as weapons are concerned, this is probably his best shot. So we'll see as the year plays out if I think that will continue to be his ceiling. But just based on his ability, what I've seen, the flashes of him, how great he has been when he's been on, if he can consistently do it, his ceiling can be Ben Roethlisberger. Now, does that mean he wins 2 Super Bowls and becomes a Hall of Famer? Maybe not, but maybe then he bumps down to like a Matt Stafford level where he puts up some numbers, but the team doesn't help him out, so he's always getting hurt and throwing picks. So maybe Matt Stafford might be his more realistic ceiling, but that's kind of where I sit right now with it.
Okay, one more question. Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I know when Fitz played, the risks were there. There were a different type of risk, though. They were more calculated risks, like, okay, my guy's just better than your guy. I'm going to throw it up to him. Versus Jameis is more a Brett Favre type of, I believe in my arm so much I'm going to fit it into this window.
Yeah.
That kind of resulted in some explosive plays, though, for the Bucs early on. Do you see the offense kind of taking a step back with those explosive plays, or do you think Jameis kind of Do you think he's going to sling it just as much? Because I don't think his deep ball may not be as great as
Right.
Fitzpatrick's is. Because I think Fitzpatrick is a better rhythm thrower than Jameis, and I think Jameis is a better pure thrower than Fitzpatrick. So do you think the explosive plays will keep up how they've been happening, or do you think they'll kind of scale back? They'll be more of a methodical offense
Right.
and traditional offense, I guess.
So that's the hope. The hope is that he does take that. I feel like if you want to like kind of make it tangible, a next step.
Yeah.
The next step for Winston is being able to connect on the deep ball, being more accurate with the deep ball, and being smarter with his throws. And those are two things that we've all been hopeful that his experience being behind Fitzpatrick is helping him learn to do that. It's been kind of widely held. It's been a widely held belief that last year having Fitzpatrick on the team helped calm Jameis down a whole lot and really showed him what a veteran does in certain situations, and how to play smarter with the football. But at this point, it's all hope.
Yeah.
And you can see it go either way because we haven't really seen Jameis yet this year. He has shown history of, like, if he has a receiver he hasn't connected well with the first year, the second year he figures it out. Like it happened with Mike Evans.
Right.
And where the hope is that he figures it out with Djax, where he can connect on the deep balls now that it's been a year together. So that is the hope. I do think he's capable of it. I optimistically think he will do it. And sitting behind Fitzpatrick, especially for these first 4 games or 3.5 games, I really hope and I believe that he has been able to learn how a veteran handles pressure, how he handles tight throws, like calculated risks, when to check down, and all that stuff. I really hope that it's rubbed off on him. I think Jameis will always be Jameis. He'll never be Ryan Fitzpatrick. He will make the dumb mistake where he's falling backwards and he tosses a moonshot into the end zone. He's going to still do that. I mean, he's never going to eradicate that. And that's going to make us pull our hair out so much. But, man, when he connects, it's awesome. So he's going to be erratic sometimes, but I do think that next step for him is being able to connect on that deep ball, like you said. And I think what better time than facing an Atlanta defense that's so porous to show it off. So that's what I want to see this week, if we want to tie it back in there.
Bring it full circle. I got you.
Yeah, man. So, okay, we're about out of time. Thanks so much for joining me on this live stream. I don't know how many more streams I'm going to be able to do this year, or this season, I should say, but there'll be plenty in the off season. I'd love to have you back, and maybe we can collaborate at some point, also non-live stream sometime this season.
Maybe I can bring you on my live stream one Wednesday, and we can talk about that. Maybe in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me, man. This is my first collab, so feels kind of cool actually not talking to I guess I'm talking to a screen still, but there's actually a real person in the face on the screen that I'm talking to besides myself. So I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, make sure you check out Aaron's channel. It's Unnecessary Bluntness. I just posted the link in the chat, so give it a click. Give him a subscribe. Obviously, he's very knowledgeable about the entire division, way more than I am. So he brings if you want to know about our enemies, I mean, he brings a great perspective across all 4 teams, and help balance out those Saints fans that keep trolling him on his channel. Speaking of trolling, by the way, this is just an aside. I tweeted this, but my last video that I did with the Bucs and the Bears somehow got caught up in the YouTube algorithm for Bears fans.
I saw the comments.
And I mean, it blew up with Bears fans. I don't want to talk bad about Chicago fans, but this is pretty typical of what I know Chicago fans to be. When things are going good, man, they run their mouth. So I appreciate all the interaction. As many of you are watching and you're one of the Cubs fans that interacted with me, I really did enjoy it. But man, that was a lot. So just speaking of fans that give you a little grief.
Yeah, YouTube is a little weird, man. There's like cult followings for each team. Like I didn't know the Saints that way, but they are. Like you said, the Bears are also. And I dropped a video last year with the Saints and Vikings game, and like a lot of my Saints subscribers were on there, and a flood of Vikings fans just came on trolling them so bad, and it was hilarious. Like I'm just sitting back in the comments laughing. So I see what you mean, man.
Yeah. So guys, give him a follow and be civil. Help Aaron out here. Don't be that kind of fan. Let's represent Bucs Nation well. And thanks, guys, for joining me in the chat. I know there's a lot of really great conversation happening in the chat room aside from our conversation, which I wish I could have read and responded to. But thanks for joining, guys. And if you're watching this after the fact, leave us comments down below. Make sure you follow Aaron. Aaron, are you active on social media, on Twitter and Instagram?
I'm not really. My personal, I am. I kind of blink. It's kind of hard to balance, especially with YouTube. But my Twitter following is crap right now, so I'm willing to argue if you guys want to come hit me up. But it's at UB Sports Talk on all social media. Facebook is probably our most active social media, but Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, UB Sports Talk. Hit me up.
Okay, awesome. And you guys heard it here. We both think the Bucs are going to come out with a win. Let's hope that happens. Hopefully we'll be 3-2. Hopefully the defense shows something and the sky stops falling. And Aaron, I look forward to that Panthers game. I might troll you a little bit when that comes around. So
week 10.
So thanks again for joining, guys. And until next week, go Bucs.